A very warm welcome to you all, and it is very great to see so many of you have rocked up on the day. Interestingly, there were over 95 registrations, of which there were 56 councils who wanted to listen in, get a copy, or certainly see the patterns from the conversation that we're going to facilitate today. I'm Fabienne Dattner, so I'm the CEO and founder of the Dattner Group. And there are many reasons why we are doing what we're going to do today with you all. Let me first do an acknowledgement to the country we come to you predominantly from, which is Wurundjeri Territory, and to acknowledge that the land we meet on was never ceded, and that may we have some small modicum of the wisdom in the protection of this environment that the people who cared for it for tens and tens of thousands of years had. Why we're doing this is because we like facts to inform conversations, and particularly facts to inform conversations with and between leaders. We are of the opinion that in the next decade, regional leadership and regional communities and regional councils are going to get progressively more and more important. As people are likely to choose to move away from city centres as the environment in which they're living is tested with the simpatico, the sympathy, the acceptance of work from anywhere, really, for many people. We think that regional New South Wales and Victoria in particular are going to become massively more interesting to more people. So that's one reason. The second, and perhaps more important reason from our perspective, is we've been huge advocates of you for a very long time. You might not know it, but we have been advocates for the leadership of councils in regional and rural Australia, and particularly Victoria and New South Wales, because we see the incredible change that has come about in your remit, in your active contribution to the way we live, the intelligence of your people, and the incredible pressure that you're under, the many hats that you wear to deliver what you do. In my humble opinion, and I work with organisations all over the world, I think you rank progressively as some of the most curious and interesting leadership that we see. Curious and interesting as in you're looking outward at what is possible and inward at capacity building. You're very conscious of your responsibility to the community, and problematic of all, your board of directors may not necessarily have evolved to the extent that you have. And much as I love councillors and do a lot of work with councillors, I think there is a miracle in the leadership of council within the organisation at the complex politics and mindsets that you negotiate to get your jobs done. We also believe that the opportunity to dramatically ramp up how councils lead their own organisations and communities is huge in preparation increasingly for what we think will be a shift in the regional communities as a result of populations leaving metro. And that is that dealing with cynicism in organisations, dealing with those who feel like they've been through endless change but nothing changes, who've been through endless cycles of council leadership, general managers or CEOs, and the belief that the real business happens at the front line of organisations. There is a massive opportunity to help leaders in this context understand there is so much more that can be done, and quite quickly, to create a genuinely engaged and collaborative workforce. The more aware and engaged and collaborative the workforce is under aware and engaged leadership, the more attractive you're going to become to talent. So that's why the headline for this is the importance of making regional communities attractive to talent, because increasingly that's what they're looking for. Enlightened, aware leadership, leading enlightened and aware organisations. So we know for many of you, you're already leading significant change, and we're saying it's worth accelerating and it's worth getting support for. So we think cynicism can be turned to skepticism very quickly. We think people by nature want to collaborate, and we think regional and rural communities are best equipped to collaborate, where metros struggle, genuinely struggle. So the proposition is, how do you make culture a tailwind, not a headwind? Something that moves strategy forward, doesn't push it backwards. If your strategy is working, if you have a culture strategy map and your people are engaged, then you are by default going to increasingly become attractive to talent. We are advocates for and work with many councils committed, deeply committed to elevating the visibility of women leading, which we think is of paramount importance. So all in all, this leads to a conversation today between leaders in council about what they've led and changed in order to make themselves more attractive to talent. Now, I'm not going to do a big introduction. I do want to note some of the councils who send multiple people to the day, and how peculiar it is we have a connection with you all. Mount Alexander, Rose Arrere. We couldn't believe it, but the husband of one of our team is currently making a kitchen for Rose. Mildura Rural City, of course, is a place we visited endlessly in many years of working with Sonitate. Bega Shire Council, many years of conversation with Bega Cheese. Bellingen, another one of our team, lives there, and so it goes. So we're grateful to have you here, and we feel a deep connection to you and commitment to you. But what you're going to do for the rest of the session is hear from not only people who've led change, but each leader's been asked to bring a second with them. The second speaker will come up in the breakout rooms, and each of these speakers have been selected because they've been on the receiving end of change, what it was like before and what it was like after. And our experience is, for a lot of leaders, dealing with the recalcitrant, the cynical, the this will never change crew is often one of the hardest things we do. So we want you to hear from people who've gone through the change, because no one knows better what the benefits are and how it makes it a gravitational force for talent. Organisations that have been spat upon in public because their reputation was in tatters, transformed into organisations both the community and staff are deeply proud of, and now are finding it easier to recruit. So first off the rank of speakers, it's a great pleasure to welcome Toni Lyon, who we've known for many, many years from the city of Greater Bendigo. I'm not going to talk about her, she's going to talk about her. Over to you, Toni.
Thanks, Phoebe. So I am Toni. I'm the Coordinator of Organisation Development at the City of Greater Bendigo. So for people who like to understand structure, I am 4th level and have an org development team that sits in the People and Culture unit. So Bendigo, we feel like at Bendigo, we've got a lot of stuff to attract people to the region to start with before we look at our organisation. We're in central Victoria, and we are on Dja Dja Wurrung and Taungurung country. So I'm on Dja Dja Wurrung country today. We have about 126,000 people here, and that's expected to grow to 200,000 by 2050. We deliver 65 services in the community, and we're really seen as a leader in the region in local government because of our size and location. We have a commercial airport. We've got an internationally renowned gallery and theatres. We're central for Bendigo Health for the region. We have the headquarters of Bendigo and Adelaide Bank, a La Trobe Uni campus. And for those watching what's been in the news, we also have Thales here who make the Bushmasters that have been sent over to Ukraine to support them. And we have been named a UNESCO Creative City of Gastronomy, which is another attraction to the region. But we also now have the Galkangu Bendigo Gov Hub, which is a fabulous $120 million building that has been built by the state government, that we are the major tenant, and has brought 1,000 public servants into the centre of Bendigo. So that's about a bit about Bendigo and why we're well located to attract people to the region. And then our organisation, we have just over 1,100 employees, so about 760 FTE. 58% of those are women. But what we do see probably the same in many other organisations, that women are overrepresented in our part-time employees when you look at FTE. We have a really big commitment to learning and development and professional development through building capability, training, internal and external secondments, a strong commitment to women in leadership. So we've had over 50 of our women go through the Compass program with the DATNA Group since 2017. 39 of those women are still with the city, and 31 of them have made some sort of change when they've been here, either in position or unit. It might be a lateral move, but they've all taken the opportunity to have other development experiences following their involvement in Compass. We're working really hard to embed capability through a framework that's clear for people around expectations and how we do things. And there's a big organisational commitment to diversity, equity and inclusion, with lots of learning opportunities for people about how they bring that into every role that they have. We support study and there's lots of flexibility. We have dedicated investment in change management with 2 change managers in the organisation. We also have a really strong trainee and apprenticeship program, so nearly 60 through in the last 5 years, with about 2/3 of those in outdoor areas, and have continued with employment. So really looking at what succession planning looks like, workforce planning for the organisation. But all of it really taps into employee purpose. We get to make a difference every day in the community, and most people who work for us are really committed to that and have a strong connection to that purpose. So local government, I think, is a great level to tap into that and really say what matters to people. Why do they want to come and work in local government? And with the entitlements and conditions we have, it kind of outweighs the fact that we can't really compete in salary anymore. It's becoming, particularly with younger generations, what is the value proposition for people? What matters to people? Why do they want to do the work that they do? So part of what I do is really try and link that to people's purpose and the fact that we get to make a difference. So my role is really focused internally on our people and how we set them up for success and focus on working together. So what are some of the things we've done? So there's been a really overt commitment from leadership for us around developing people, and particularly women in leadership. We are very lucky to have resources. That is me. It doesn't have to be me, but we do have a position where we have resources both in people and budget to support the work in the org development space and building capability and professional development. So one of the commitments that the organisation made for me when I did Compass was for me to get my LSI accreditation, for people who are aware of that tool. So then I can work with our women who have been through the Compass program to do more work on their LSI. What does that look like? What does their professional development work, action plans, what do they want to change, and how are they going to do that with internal support and accountability, I've got to say, because it's easy to put it on the shelf, but if you've got to talk to me every 6 months, then you need to do something about it. We do have budget, both in my team and in unit budgets, to support professional development and leadership training. And we also put out expressions of interest for people to be involved in leadership programs. So that's a really open process, and it's not necessarily linked to your level within the organisation. It is open for people who are looking for opportunities to grow. We have a number of champions across the organisation, particularly unit managers, who really support leadership development in their teams, but more broadly, and are known to support that, and so are very approachable for people to have those chats and think about what it can look like, regardless of where you sit. And really, we do a lot of storytelling. So I get a number of our program participants to go to our exec meetings to say, what did they learn? What did they get out of it? What are they bringing back to the organisation? So really telling the story about what's the return on investment for the organisation. We do things in our newsletter. We talk about it in corporate induction. So, really getting the word out and promoting that we are an organisation that is committed to people's learning and development and growth and opportunities. We talk a fair bit about what leave and entitlements people have, what flexibility is available. So really reminding them what they have access to and how it can be supported, particularly through different life stages. You know, we know in the recruitment sector that flexibility is huge now. I think there was a SEEK survey that said people will not apply for jobs now if there is not flexibility offered. So being really proactive about what flexibility is available and what that can look like. So as an attraction. We're really looking at refocusing our performance and development process around capabilities. So it's not just about outputs and what we do, but how we do it. So what matters, setting the expectations and recognising there are different career aspirations for people. Some people are very happy to stay in their role. And then what does learning and development support look for people where they're at? Because we know that through the retention process, it can't always be everyone wants to get promoted and move into a more senior level. Like we don't have the spots, but we do want people to still feel challenged and have the opportunity to grow and develop and be supported in that. The Gender Equality Act in Victoria has been a great platform for progressing women in leadership and putting a really a focus on what does that look like and holding organisations accountable. We were already doing a lot of work in that space, but it does help us formalise that and think more consciously as an organisation about what we do and how we do it. So I guess in wrapping up, it's really about, for us and for me in the role I have, how do we focus on what matters to people, both as an individual and as part of the organisation, tapping into the value proposition of people and making our people our best advocates for working at the city. Thanks, baby.
Fantastic, Tony. Tony is an incredible resource to anyone on screen today who's in the role of CHRO or P&C or L&D or DE&I, wanting to see the sequence, because Tony's rattled off this vast plethora of activities, which makes me feel mildly anxious. But I know it started way back when Tony and I first met. Almost none of this, I think, was actually happening, and it has grown exponentially, which I think in many ways is a wonderful theme that you're going to hear in the conversation. The next leader I want to introduce you to, and again, she will introduce herself, is Karen Ellis. She's currently the Chief Executive Officer of South Gippsland Shire Council. And Karen, the 10 minutes of time is yours.
Thanks, Fabian, and thank you for organising this session. It's fantastic to have an opportunity to speak today, and hello to everyone out there. Lots of friends online. It's nice to see you all. So, as Fabian said, I'm the Chief Executive Officer at South Gippsland Shire Council. I commenced here in March 2020, and I am very anxious about keeping my story to 10 minutes, so please feel free to tell me to shut up in due course. So I thought I'd give you a little bit of an understanding of the background that immediately predated my appointment, and then it has been a pretty comprehensive time of transformation in the 3.5 odd years that I've been here. But I really wanted to focus in particular on the work that I've done with the leadership team in the organisation. And the reason I wanted to take the opportunity to talk about that today is that I really think it's not only very challenging, but also quite unethical to expect staff at more junior levels to perform in a really sort of a high-performing and capable way, but more importantly, to lead and work in the community with a strong values foundation if they're not observing that kind of conduct in their leaders. So from my perspective, when I started at South Gippsland, that was where I really wanted to start. And I think that has been one of the, I guess, key elements of our success in our journey to date. So when I started in March 2020, the organisation had been through a pretty challenging period over the preceding probably 3 or 4 years, really. Had a very dysfunctional council in place that had not only demonstrated a lot of infighting amongst themselves, but had engaged in conduct towards staff and directly towards community members that was highly inappropriate, abusive, threatening, and really just very poor for council's brand in the community, and also really not constructive or helpful in terms of supporting the community to reach its longer term aspirations. And there had been a pretty fundamental breakdown of trust and confidence between the community and the council. And as probably everyone on this call today knows, many members of the community don't distinguish between staff and councillors. So whilst it was the councillors that were behaving in a way that was pretty unfortunate, it was quite often the staff that were on the receiving end of that feedback from the community, and the community were pretty comfortable in letting us know how they felt. Which created a situation where we had a culture, a lot of really talented and high-performing staff, but very gun-shy and not sure or not confident that they'd be well supported by their leaders. The councillors were dismissed in June 2019. The last thing that they did literally at the council meeting prior to their dismissal, was make the decision not to offer my predecessor, Tim Tamlin, another contractor's CEO. He'd been CEO in the organisation for 10 years and had been, I guess, part of the stability that staff drew upon in a time of change. So that was pretty challenging for staff as well. And then we had administrators appointed in July 2019, as well as an interim CEO appointed, who was one of the directors at the time. And then one of the first things, obviously, the administrators needed to do was recruit a new CEO, which, as luck would have it, ended up being me, which was a pretty exciting opportunity for me, definitely. And then I started in my role in March 2020, which was perfect timing because I got 10 days in the office before COVID happened. So that was plenty. We fixed everything in those 10 days. So I guess from my perspective, just going back to where I started, what I observed really early in my time at council was that people had been through a period of trauma, and they really needed to have the opportunity to have those stories heard and understood. And it really felt as though prior to the councillors getting dismissed, there was a very strong emphasis on keep your head down so that it doesn't get shut off, and just get your job done and do it as well as you can. And we had a number of really high performing staff that did that really well. And probably like any organisation, we had some staff that thought that was a fantastic opportunity to possibly not do too much at all. And then we also had a lot of problems with attraction and retention of staff, particularly at leadership level, because of the conduct that they were subject to and because of the environment they were working in amongst the community. So when I walked in, we had a lot of really capable people that had been damaged by the experience. And then we had a range of people working at leadership level who probably, in my assessment, weren't at the point they needed to be at to really lead a strong and values-based organisation into the future. And some of that was because there hadn't been a strong history of investment in our leaders, and some of that was because people had probably been appointed to roles that they didn't really have the capability to perform in. It was a challenging time because I was really trying to lead a transformation and a sort of a cultural rethink of the organisation, literally from my dining room, and didn't have the opportunity to be out and meeting with people face to face just before COVID. However, upon reflection, I think as much as there was a lot of stuff about COVID that was difficult, one of the things that I think was actually a benefit was that there are a lot of opportunities for me to talk to people one-on-one and to listen to people's stories. And it became really evident to me fairly early in the piece that a lot of the staff just needed someone to care, and they needed someone to listen to what they'd been through. They didn't want to dwell in the past, but they needed to know that the past had been understood and respected so that there was a point from which we could move forward together into the future. So a big chunk of my early weeks and months in the organisation, particularly with our key leaders at that team leader coordinator level, was really just about understanding to start to talk to people about how I saw the future, and also start to build trust with the organisation, which was obviously had been missing and was obviously really important ingredient, and supporting each other, rather than the culture of blame that was there when I started. And it was remarkable how often in the early days, if things weren't working, the leadership team would be really quick to blame the people underneath them. And from my perspective, it's not really leadership, but also it really, it was a really early and clear clue into where the problems lay in the organisation.
Sarah, is it just me, or is...
No, it's happening here too.
Yeah.
We're losing it.
And many of them did, but perhaps
Karen,
unsurprisingly.
Karen, just to let you know, you're dropping in and out.
Okay, sorry.
Is there anything you can do, or?
The only thing I could probably do is turn my video off, which is probably not all that exciting for you.
It's deeply exciting, but why don't we try that?
I'll give it a try. So look, what I was saying was a lot of work to rebuild trust and confidence in the organisation, and I felt I needed to do that by leading with integrity from my perspective, which meant giving every leader the opportunity to be part of our future, but also being really clear with them that if you do choose to be part of our future, here's the values that we'll be working to, and here's the way that I expect you to lead your people. So there was no lack of clarity around the choice that leaders were making as to whether or not they wanted to be part of the future. And if they did, there was plenty of support offered to help them to grow and learn, and for us as a leadership team to work together. But it did mean that I also had to have...
Oh, there we go again. No, we can't see you and we can't
have
hear.
the courage to have conversations with, but it needed to be, that those decisions needed to be taken. I'm not sure if that's working any better, Fabian. I'm ploughing on regardless.
No, it is still cutting out, but we've only got 1 minute left. Give it your best.
All right. Probably the last thing that I really just wanted to share with you was that I guess the key indicator for me that we did get it right was that at all the levels, from coordinators, team leaders and below, we've consistently seen really good people take the opportunity to step up and do great things with and for our community. And I've been incredibly proud of the staff that have been with us through this journey and that are still with us now. And also, it just goes to show that if people have got leaders that have confidence in them, trust them and are willing to grow them, it's remarkable what staff can actually do. And I've been consistently impressed by how our staff have responded in really difficult circumstances, to work really courageously with our new council and partner really strongly with our community. And really excitingly, we've also seen a fantastic turnaround in our community satisfaction results, which show that, you know, the community can see the difference that this work has made, and every interaction our community has with our people is rebuilding trust and confidence, which I'm really proud of. So I'll leave it there, and hopefully for the next section, I'll be able to be understood a bit better.
Yeah, thank you so much. And thank you for soldiering through despite the technical difficulties. We all know them and we've all had them. So all peace in your heart. I think as you listen to this, first of all, Tony gives you this run of initiatives designed to engage, develop and align people. And then you hear Karen describe the methodology she picks up when everything is a mess, everything is in disarray. The council has the councillors have been suspended and the staff are disenfranchised. And in 2 years, she has created a significant change in the mindset of this team. It's worth asking Karen, when you get into the breakout rooms, what's her evidence of the good news? What is she seeing? And what's her evidence that her opinion is backed by her second? Who has she brought along to tell you their experience of the change? Is any research done on the organisation to demonstrate the shift? I also think it's really important, and we see this every day, listening to understand in order to build trust. Now, why would you start there if your intention is to to recruit great people and to become an attractive pool for talent? Because if you don't start there, no matter the talent you recruit, they won't stay. You have to start there because you have to create the culture that people want to engage with and belong to and be part of. So dealing with, we all know sometimes the epic blame and judgment that can emerge in councils, between levels, between leaders and between leadership and councillors, and the incredible damage it does to good people everywhere. And again, you're going to hear soon of the power of a values focus. That's the gravitational pull for talent. The next speaker I want to introduce you to has had, I don't know that it's still the case, the distinction of being the youngest general manager of a council in Australia for a period of time. From our perspective, one of the most brilliant and one of the most constructive, and arguably has been a mastermind in turning around a complex relationship with his councillors. So I welcome Jay Nankervis, who has many stories to share, who is the General Manager of Broken Hill City Council. So Jay, the 10 minutes is yours.
Great, thanks Fabian, and good afternoon everybody. Not completely sure about all of Fabian's comments there early on, but I'll certainly take the nice comments and go through a bit of our change journey at Broken Hill City Council. But first I thought I'd just a little bit about the city, so you just know our location. So we are a remote mining community in far west New South Wales, full-time equivalent staff of around 165 staff members and a population of 18,000 people, and quite a small city council, 180 square metres. So we're quite lucky in that regard. All we do is look after our own little city. So we have that up our sleeves as well. Been 7 years at Broken Hill City Council, so I started in June 2016 as a manager finance and chief financial officer, and was recruited by my fellow panelist James, which was great. Gave me a great introduction into leadership and change management, and then obviously got to continue on in the role of general manager once James took up his new opportunity. So we undertook a cultural change program as a part of the leadership team in 2018, and really focused in around the values of the organisation and changing those to what the staff actually believed in and knew. So prior to that, Broken Hill had a bunch of values pasted all around the windows, the walls, on business cards, bit of a marketing campaign really, and none of the staff actually understood what those meant, and I couldn't even tell you one of them anymore. That's how much they meant to all the staff members. So we went through a program where we went from the bottom up. Every single staff member went through the program to show what was important to them in their personal life, their family life, their sporting life, outside of work, and what they wanted to get from work each day when they came to council, and came up with 5 new values that were in agreement among the organisation, and really drove the idea that had to be bottom up, not led from the top. It's not, here's your values, go and live and breathe them, but these are our values as an organisation. And then in the future, if you want to join this organisation, these are the values that we expect that you're going to be a part of. Making sure that we had those supporting and unsupporting behaviours, making sure that it was very simple in regards to living those values, and when we weren't living those values, ensuring that we remove that hierarchy amongst the staffing group, that you call out bad behaviour when you see it, irrespective of who's demonstrating it, whether it be your manager, your peer, one of the executive leaders, or the general manager, that everyone was empowered to actually call out that bad behaviour to ensure that we were pushing that through the organisation. We also took the opportunity through the DATNA program to develop change leaders within the organisation, a strong focus on women in leadership through the Compass program. We've probably gone to the point now where we've actually run out of females within the workforce to go through that program, but obviously an importance on creating leaders and that diversity among our workforce, and admitting mistakes as leaders. So doing what we say we do, but when mistakes are made, being transparent and accountable to the organisation. So not passing the blame on to anybody else, but taking it from the top, that we're responsible overall. And that obviously builds trust with the workforce, that they can have that opportunity to be innovative and try new things. And when mistakes are made, that's okay. We're in a learning environment, but it also begins to build trust with the community as well, that we are being a transparent organisation. When I took over as GM, we were going through a bit of a period of change. We were just going into a new election, and we ended up with a completely new council, 180 degrees transformation from our previous council to our new council. So it was important that we had that stability up front as a workforce, and having that trust and confidence, and also making sure that we build those relationships with the new councillors moving forward to create that stability. So it's obviously easy in a small council with not many staff members, but making sure that us as leaders, we meet with the entire workforce and show that we are listening to their concerns, listening to what they don't have, and making sure that we actually implement some of those small, easy wins straight away. And that could either be new tools or a staff barbecue once a month with the entire workforce, but taking on those ideas and making sure that we're demonstrating that we are listening and implementing their ideas as quickly as possible to start to build that trust. So building trust, accountability and transparency we found to be the most important factor. Listening and following through, rewarding good behaviour, but most importantly, calling out the bad behaviour and showing the workforce that any dysfunctional teams and individuals will be dealt with in a way that we try to make you constructive. But if that doesn't work, then ultimately it does move along to performance management, and that council isn't a job for life as it once was, and ensuring that we push that message through that we are a high performing organisation. Council's not a place where you get a job and then you're there for the next 50, 60 years until you retire, and the community knows as such. So making sure you start to build that outwards visibility as well. So to make sure that happened, we looked at the mentality of employing people with the right cultural fit, and more important than someone with the right technical skills or education, that our leaders needed to be constructive, that they needed to develop the teams below them for future succession, and also that they had the right organisational fit and cultural values of the organisation above and beyond, because you can train the technical skills, you can gain the qualifications quite easily. Everybody can do that. But you can't turn around values of an individual. If you haven't got the right values to fit within an organisation, then obviously it's time to look for another organisation where those values fit. And we took the approach of having those conversations with staff members that didn't align with the organisation, and actually help and assist them transition out of the organisation to somewhere else where their values were more aligned. So having faith and trust that the organisation will invest in your personal development. So that's a part of that succession planning. So bringing up our leaders from the bottom and having faith in them that we'll be able to build your development and have that education provided to you. You have that internal succession planning moving forward. And as Tony and Karen both mentioned earlier, that there is positions moving upwards. And there is a goal at the end of it, but ultimately there is a point in time where you can't move any further, and making sure you have those opportunities to lead projects, teams, and have those secondments and move around the organisation, that we're continually developing our people. And it starts to build trust within the community as well, that you are a local employer, and people do want to come to council to work, to build those skills and qualifications longer term, build your leadership potentials, to move on for better opportunities if they do arise, because you've tapped out in regards to your senior leadership journey. We also took a strong focus through our leadership development program, and driven by the staffing group, that it's the importance of work-life balance, ably assisted by COVID-19, obviously everyone working from home and having a new perspective on life, but that the organisation values family. We value the importance of the recreational time, encouraging kids and families in the workplace, and build connections not only with your work colleagues, but also with your work, your work teammates, families, and really building that environment. And you get what you put in. So getting rid of that 9 to 5, you're expected to be between 9 to 5, and you might only do 3 hours worth of work. But having that flexibility that we're going to have the 8-hour working day, and you do it when you need to do it, because you're getting out of it what you put in, and getting rewarded for that review time put in. Constant surveying we've undertook with DATNA as well through cultural surveys, just to identify where we are progressing and where we're starting to lag as well. So it's not always positive, and it's important that you do stress that with the organisation, that we're going to have those up and down moments, but then to work with the entire organisation to set those actions and priorities around what's working, what's not working, and having it driven from the bottom up again. So not having your senior leadership team make the decisions and then try and push it out, but have those ideas flowing right from the bottom upwards as well, so that we can all celebrate the wins, but also acknowledge when we are starting to reduce in some areas, and put in actions to improve that as well. So over that journey, I'll just quickly go through some of the results. I know that I'm running out of time. We have seen the attraction of staff become a lot easier to Broken Hill, and being a remote community, that's hard. We always say, once you've come to Broken Hill, we'll be able to keep you, but it's hard to actually get you here in the first instance, just because of accessibility into the city and the cost, most importantly. So we have been able to get a lot of professional positions and senior managers that we once struggled with. Our community trust in our latest community satisfaction surveys increased by 10%. Our staff constructive culture has increased by 44%. And I think the main result out of this is that the feedback from the community comes back that staff members are no longer embarrassed to say they work for council, but they're promoting to come and work for council, and having that positive relationships that we are able to actually bring a lot of locals back that have moved away, coming back, wanting to work for city council, whereas once was probably not the ideal employer of choice. Our retention has increased after probation, and our retention during probation has reduced, which is a good thing in one regard, but a opportunity for improvements in our recruitment cycle there. So our leaders are happy to make the tough decisions around cultural fit, which is great. It's no longer just let them go through and put up with it for the rest of the time, but making sure that we are having that performance management and creating that trust within the organisation, the other staff members, that if people aren't performing or aren't the right fit, that leaders are willing to make the hard and tough decisions. And then obviously that gives us opportunities for future growth in regards to making sure we're getting our recruitment right up front, that we are having that more focus on cultural fit as opposed to some of the technical requirements. And we've created that better relationship with the community over time, over that past 12 months as well. So once the community starts to become a little bit happier with council and not continuously bagging you out, you obviously have more opportunity to recruit within the community, but also the staff morale increases as well, because they're not constantly getting that negative feedback. And I think one of the last ones I'll touch on before I hand back to Fabian.
We're out of time, Jay.
Out of time? No worries. Thank you.
However, I'm really glad we got those extra couple of minutes with you, because it highlighted the consequence of all the work that Jay and his leadership team and predecessor undertook, is that it's easier to recruit, it's easier to build talent up, it's easier to take talent from community because the reputation is good, it's easier to keep people that you recruit because your values aligned, it's easier to get rid of poor performers because you're not values aligned. So the process leads to an outcome, rather than saying, here's a whiz-bang marketing trick to attract talent, which is such it's a pyramid that's upside down. And again, you hear the importance of listening, and you hear in Jay's hands this strong focus on bottom-up leadership. And in the end, this transformative relationship with councillors that Jay has overseen has been quite remarkable. It doesn't mean they're all bells and whistles and perfect. It means there is a high functioning relationship between Jay, the senior leadership team, and councillors as well. And indeed, of course, Jay is a walking, talking example of our next speaker's talent around succession planning. And I do know, and I'm not ashamed to say it, James tried every which way but loose to manage to snaffle Jay away as his CFO for his next move. But Jay indeed had the courage to stay put and has demonstrated resoundingly his skill as a general manager. So without further ado, let me introduce you to James Romcom, who is the current General Manager of Armidale Regional Council. James, your 10 minutes starts now.
Thank you, Fabian, and good afternoon, everybody. And thanks to the DATNA Group for pulling this forum together today. I think it's a very important discussion, and I've enjoyed listening to the previous speakers. Can I just start by acknowledging the traditional owners of the lands that I come to you from today, up in the Armidale, New England region of New South Wales. I think it's about 14 degrees outside, so quite chilly, but nothing unusual for Armidale. And pay my respects to elders past, present and emerging. And can I also just acknowledge my councillor colleagues, my 1+1, Amy Hutton and Josh Byrne, who will be in the panel sessions later. Thank you both for agreeing to be part of this. Attraction and retention are really key issues for local government, as we know. And I think, as Karen said earlier, we can't be market leaders when it comes to salaries and wages, so we really do need a point of difference. In my experience, regional and rural councils have play a major role in shaping their communities, far more so than metro councils do. So, what we do has a really significant impact on what our community is like and the type of people that will move to our areas. Strong councils generally mean strong community, and of course the converse applies to that. A great place will attract great people, whether that be your town, your region or your organisation. I might just start at the end to where we find ourselves now, and then work backwards a little bit. But over the past 2 years, we have built a highly engaged, highly motivated, proud and aligned workforce that clearly understands its purpose. And that wasn't always the case going back a few years back. The underlying principle that we've used to achieve that, of course, has really been around a clear focus on culture, underpinned by values and behaviours-based leadership. That really is our point of difference. And the other thing that we do have a very strong focus on is a no dickhead policy, but I'll get to that a little bit later on. When I started with council 2.5 years ago, that was in January 2021, it was a very different landscape. A dysfunctional elected council who had actually been suspended for a period of 6 months, high levels of distrust, disengaged, non-aligned workforce, really limited pride, and as Karen talked about, was really a deeply wounded staffing group that really needed to tell its story. With that too, as Karen mentioned, I was actually also employed by the administrator of the day. So normally that's the domain of council to come in and pick its CEO or its general manager. The council didn't have that. We had 7 of our 11 councillors come back. So their stories were really important too in terms of that journey, not only the staff. So it was really right from the word go. I needed to build those relationships with the councillors, but also seek to understand the journey that they had been on and the pain and suffering that they felt that they'd gone through and where their story was. So whenever I talk about where we've been as an organisation, it really includes that councillor group as well, and having taken them on the journey. I guess the other thing I would say is that, for me, I like to, my dad once said to me, son, you've got 2 ears and 1 mouth, use them in proportion. So one of the things that I like to do is listen to people's stories, listen to what, and have those discussions with people, but just observe and listen to what those stories are. And again, everybody had a story, and again, not dissimilar to what Karen was saying. And it was a really sad stories about how people felt they'd been really let down by their leadership group. There was a lack of the council and the community were at war. The staffing group and the executive were at war, and the executive and the councillors were at war before they were suspended. So, you can just imagine the sort of place that I walked into back in January 2021. I guess one of the things, having heard a few of those stories in the first few days of my tenure, led me to want to go to the market and essentially undertake a culture audit. I really wanted to get a clear understanding of what it was I was dealing with, and then chart a pathway forward. So we went out to market. The DATNA Group, as leadership experts, were the successful tenderers as part of that work, thankfully. And I have had the great honour of working with Fabian and the DATNA Group for probably the last 7 or 8 years. And really that was about how we right the ship, create a turnaround strategy, and then how we work forward from there. The culture audit was in, probably the other thing I'll just say too that I realised probably in my first few weeks was that and what really bothered me was the lack of women in executive roles and or senior leadership roles. I found that quite disturbing and something that needed to be addressed. So we set upon that journey. The first step there was really about the culture audit, as I mentioned. And as Jay was saying, what I didn't want to do was create a set of values and behaviours that I sat in my office, rolled them out and said, right, here's what everybody's going to do. Fit's an incredibly important part of how we operate organisation fit, incredibly important part of what we do, how we retain and how we attract, and people know that right from the beginning. But we did the culture audit. We had 55 face-to-face or Zoom interviews of people from across the organisation, and about 140, 150 people take part in the survey. So we really had a good cross-section of information come back from our workforce, and which again included our counsellors to create a bit of a baseline for where we're at as an organisation. Lack of finances, a poor organisation structure that had never been revisited for the best part of 15 odd years, councillor infighting and dysfunction, as I mentioned, lack of pride. People wouldn't go out in public if you're a council employee with a uniform on or a lanyard on that branded where you were from, just for fear of ridicule and being abused. That's how bad it had got. So we knew that we had a few issues that we needed to deal with. Having gone down that path, one of the things I promised the organisation right from the beginning was that when we got the results of the culture audit back, wards and all, everybody across the organisation, staff and councillors, would have the opportunity to review that and have their input, got that document back, circulated that out throughout the workforce. And then we set about having a number of debrief sessions right across the organisation, just again to fact check for those that hadn't either been interviewed or submitted a survey response, just to get their views and make sure we captured everyone. I think we've got about 92% of the workforce in the end through those debrief sessions. So we knew that what we were doing and the pathway that we were on was the right one. Next phase, again, from my perspective, we really needed to engage the entire organisation and have them part of the solution. Pulled together a group of about 15 staff from right across the organisation, so not just executive or senior managers, but people from whether you're a customer service officer, whether you worked out in the outdoor workforce, but a really good cross-section of the organisation. Again, the focus being on distilling that information and pulling together a strategy map that had a draft set of values and supportive and unsupportive behaviours, a key measure. And again, part of that process was just to stress test that and make sure the entire organisation was on board, because this was going to be the way in which we dealt with poor behaviour or behaviour that didn't align with the culture that we were trying to set. We called that the OPARC group, Operation Planet Ark, or ARC, and that was very successful. But that group brought together essentially the strategy map, the draft strategy map, and then in a World Cafe event, the first of its kind, held right in the middle of COVID over Zoom. I don't think that's ever been done anywhere before, Fabian. We had the entire workforce engaged over a couple of days, 3 or 4 sessions a day, just to make sure that everybody again had the ability to be able to stress test that and come up with a direction, if you like, for the organisation to live and die by. So that was a key initiative. We had that adopted in October 21, and then that really became the blueprint from which we've been working on our turnaround strategy over the last couple of years. and the vehicle with which everybody gets to seek to hold one another to account. And that's everyone from the new apprentice in the workshop through to me and my role as general manager and anywhere in between, and also the councillors. It was a key part of inducting a new council in that they were introduced to the strategy map and understood where they sat in the landscape as well, and what the expectations were of them, albeit a little bit harder to herd that group than it is perhaps a staffing group. We work on a very simple principle here in terms of fit. If you're 80%, and anybody that's applying for jobs, if you're 80% suitable for the role, with the capability and capacity to grow the rest of the way through investment and training, we'll take you on. As opposed to somebody who's 100% technically proficient but a terrible human being and will tear your culture apart. So, we make it really clear right up front that that's how we recruit, and we've had a significant improvement and uptake in terms of people that are applying for roles at Armidale Regional Council, and the quality of candidate has just absolutely blown us away. I mean, as well as growing our own through girls and civil programs, tackling that sort of 15, 16-year-olds, just introducing them to what construction might look like and civil construction might look like in a council setting, through to seasoned professionals. We went through a phase where we found it really difficult to attract anyone to roles at council because of the reputation that it had, to now being a council where we are attracting high caliber candidates, and we're actually beating people away with a stick because we don't have enough roles to actually be able to take them on. So it's been a massive and significant turnaround over a 2-year period. I would describe us as good where we're at the moment, but we want to be brilliant, and that's the next phase of our development. We've got a World Cafe coming up in a couple of days where we're going to revisit the strategy map and where we've been, reset our targets, and then really go forward as an organisation, and really go from good to brilliant, and really take this organisation to the next level with a heavy investment in personal development of right across the workforce, which is the next phase of where we're at. So I'm probably out of time, but thank you very much.
Thank you, James. Another layer in place for everyone, and hearing the outcome of this order of work from everyone. So you're seeing a pattern emerge. Develop your people, develop values alignment, invest in leadership capability, articulate the culture you want. And a funny thing happens, you start to become an attraction force for talent, no matter where you are. And we think that can escalate in the foreseeable future as people choose not to live in the cities necessarily. I noticed that James had a tagline in the turnaround strategy. He had a team that were there to guide the strategy, and they weren't just exec, there were people across the organisation. I would say, knowing James pretty well, I would say he's one of the best listeners I've ever met. When you're in a meeting with a group of people, James will talk rarely and then selectively, but he's always listening to people. The research that's done to make sure you do actually hear what people are saying, you don't guess it, is crucially important. That is one of the greatest frustrations staff express, is that the leaders are talking for us but not listening to us. And that's a big difference in transformational change. We have to listen to and then create space for people to participate. There's a wonderful thing called the wisdom of the crowd. The better we get at doing this, the better the outcome, because people everywhere want to contribute the best they can. And the question for leaders is not, are you smart or are you right or am I right, but rather, how do we enable many, many more people to be right, to contribute and to collaborate? Okay, so that takes us to the end of part 1 in this process. So stick around for part 2. We'll now put you into rooms, and I'm just wondering, DG team, if we might only do 2 rotations of 10 minutes each, pick up a little bit of time and enable you to spend a bit more time in the groups. At this juncture, what will happen is there'll be a DG person in the room to help if needed. There will be one of the general managers or CEOs, if you're in Victoria, and there will be their second. So you now have the opportunity to hear from someone who's been on the receiving end. One of the reasons why we thought this was incredibly important, because leaders talking to leaders can be a self-fulfilling prophecy. We think we're great, we think they're fine, but we don't actually hear the voice of the people who are on the receiving end of appalling behaviour. As Karen said at the very beginning, genuinely traumatised by the shocking behaviour of leaders and counsellors, hear what that actually meant, and then what it was like to be on the receiving end of all the change that the various leaders have wrought in their own organisations. So this should be joyful and inspiring. And what we will say, we advise you to listen as you go into this process, is listen curiously to the language of blame and judgment, and conscious that we often brand people in a certain way, and the branding itself is one of the cultural problems. So on that note, two rooms, 10 minutes, but it's your chance to hear from someone on the receiving end and a much deeper dive into this conversation. Thank you, Lucy.
Hi everyone, our tech person in the background is going to put you all into breakout rooms. You'll be able to go into those breakout rooms. Just bear with us while we do that in the background. Thanks so much for your contribution. Thanks, Phoebe. And we look forward to hearing everyone. And so you're...
Thanks so much. Thanks so much for popping into all the rooms. Just handing over to Fabian when she's back in. Great. Hey, Fabes, thanks.
Thank you. Welcome back, everyone. What a, and I don't know about the rest of you, but I think our group found that incredibly interesting. And if I were handing out awards for a showstopper exercise, and I'm going to completely forget your name, Karen's offside. Where are you? Wave at me.
Sophie,
who said there are 4 questions I asked myself. Can I take an idea and be heard? Can I go to a community council meeting and not want to throw up? Can I wear my badge in public or do I take my jacket off? Can I make a mistake and own it? Pre the change? No, 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 no. Post the change? Yes, 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 yes. And that made the hair on the back of my arms rise up about how wicked the before was and how constructive the after is. In the end, everyone on screen is dead a long time. A reminder that we have a massive impact on the people we share our lives with, and we would want it to be a constructive and kind one. I'm going to say that this has exceeded, certainly I would say, our expectations in terms of output. A few things just before we get the wind-up statement from our leaders. We will be sending you 3 case studies, one from Bendigo, one from Broken Hill and one from Armidale on the journey. We will be sending you all a blueprint of all the critical elements we think have to be done. Great questions have been raised and we will endeavour to synthesise this from all the rooms together with the opening session and send you all a copy of the synthesis. Everything is available to you, and obviously you now have a network of leaders who've done the journey and you can reach out to directly. So on that note, in the spirit of finishing on time, let's open very quickly, 1 minute each, to first Tony, then Karen, then Jay, then James. 1 minute each, your closing message.
Thank you, Baby. This has been great. Thank you everyone for attending. I think what I said early, you provide a great environment, you get great people and the best out of them. They become our best advocates. So kind of attraction and recruitment and retention become a self-fulfilling prophecy if you provide the right environment. Thank you.
Ain't that the truth? Karen.
Mine's probably similar to Tony's in the sense that I think if as leaders we create an environment that we want to lead in and that we want to be present in and that reflects our values, it's going to be a much more attractive environment for the kind of people that we want in our organisation. And particularly for rural and regional councils, I think the benefits and opportunities that COVID created for flexible work is an absolute gift for us. And I think we need to be really clever and deliberate about how we continue to benefit from those opportunities, and be really cautious as leaders not to just go back to the way things were because they were that way, but be clever and thoughtful about what work looks like into the future.
Beautiful. Jay.
Thank you. And yeah, I'll just be echoing those comments as well. But I think the key takeaway for me is, and it's been refreshing again today to hear it from everybody else, is around engagement with your staff and engagement with your people. Obviously, that's the most important thing, and not to remove yourself from that journey. Culture is continuously developing, and as soon as you think that you've got it right, then you're on that downward spiral. So just to keep talking to everybody and making sure that you're acting on everyone's involvement. Thanks, Fabian.
Beautiful. James, last but not least.
Thank you, Fabian. I'd probably leave you with culture as king. One of the major reasons why I decided to become a general manager or a CEO of a council was because I'd worked for a lot of general managers and CEOs that I think were really poor at it, and created environments of fear, environments where you didn't feel valued and all of those sorts of things. And so, not that I thought I'd necessarily be a great general manager, I just felt like I could be better than that. And my goal and was always to want to just try and create an environment where people were really happy, people wanted to wake up in the morning and feel good to come into that work environment, place where you can have a bit of a laugh and a joke, and but everyone still understands what their roles and responsibilities are, and we get on and deliver. And it's much easier to deliver on a broader basis for our community if people are really happy and engaged and want to be part of the journey, than it is that people sort of begrudgingly come in and or don't come in at all because absenteeism that's high. So we've been able to have a significant impact on absenteeism and workers' compensation claims, all by just creating a really positive culture where people want to be. Fabian, I'll finish up by just really, again, thanking you and the DATNA group more broadly for pulling this together. Absolutely fantastic initiative, and thank you so much from my perspective for including me in the day. I really appreciate it, and thank you to all of you for being part of it. It's been a really great thing to do, and yeah, I wish you all well. Happy if anyone wants to reach out to me to articulate my story perhaps a little bit better than I have over in my previous session, but thank you all.
Thank you, James. It's a beautiful ending note. We hope this is the start of something that we will help facilitate going forward, because we think you're so supportive and important to the community wellbeing in Australia, and not enough is being done at this level for leaders to talk to other leaders, in our opinion. I want to thank very quickly the DG team, because actually this has been an enormous amount of work that's gone on for nearly 4.5 months. And whilst I could name all the team members, I particularly want to acknowledge the lovely Sarah Green, who's so self-effacing and quiet and beautiful, but it's done an epic job to get you all here. And we hope that next time we say come, we're going to create something of value for you all. It will make sense and you'll go, I'm not going to miss that. There are major headlines ahead that we think are crucial, not least of which is to do that epic piece of research that Emmy has triggered in my head. So to our CEOs and general managers, huge thank you for your generosity. For the seconds, thank you for your honesty, and we will see you not far down the line. Big hugs to you all. Bye-bye.
Thanks, Fabian.
Thank you, everybody.
Thanks everyone for participating. We really appreciate your time.
Thanks. See you all.
Bye-bye.